Weird childhood stories. I will preface this by stating that none of this will be green text, and that any spelling mistakes can be attributed to English not being my native tongue. I have never mentioned any of the following stories before, except for a few mentions between my family and I, so I don't know why I'm posting this now, least of all on this site. I suppose I need to get some of this off my chest. I'm 23 now, and some of this still haunts me to this very day. I had a strange childhood. I was raised by my grandmother and my mother, although my grandmother really was the more parental figure, as my mother has no authority and treated me more like a friend than a child, making it hard for us to have a normal relationship. We never stayed in the same place for long, essentially living a nomadic lifestyle. The most time we ever spent living somewhere, before I was 13, was 6 months. I thought it was normal until I started to go to school at 14, honestly. I was not allowed to have friends or talk to other children. I was homeschooled and was not allowed to use the internet or read non-approved books before then. So while I realize now that it was some kind of abuse, back then, I wasn't especially unhappy with my lot in life, as I was not aware that I should not be living like that. Think of it as being a Mormon without a community, if you will. Now, with the detachment that years have shed on those years, I realize that it might be less about religious fanaticism and more about the strange events that kept happening through the years. The first story I can personally remember is what I will call the rabid fox incident. I remember it clearly, even now, as if the fear I felt then has made a permanent mark on my mind. Back then, we had been living in a townhouse in London for about 3 months, and we ended up staying in that house for 6 months, the longest we ever stayed in a single place, or a city really, in all of my childhood years, perhaps because my grandmother actually owned the house, and my mother had grown up there, which will be relevant later on in the stories. A rather simple layout, a ground floor of a kitchen, living room, and office, a below ground floor giving out to the front and back garden with 2 bedrooms, a bathroom with a shower, and a storage room, and the first floor, with 2 more bedrooms, another bathroom, and access to the attic. But the thing that fascinated me the most was the back garden. It was fairly big, and horribly overgrown beyond the small tiled area in front of one of the bedrooms, which had direct access to it. It seemed like a jungle to my 6-year-old self, and I wanted nothing more than to explore it. I wasn't allowed in the garden alone, probably so that the neighbors would not see me, although there was a tall brick wall surrounding it, and none of the windows of nearby houses gave a clear view of the overgrown area, and no one would let me play beyond the tiled area when I was supervised, and I was often home alone, long enough for even the most studious child to get a bad case of cabin fever. So, one sunny afternoon, when I was sure that no one would be back until the evening, I simply slid out of the door and gleefully rushed towards the great outdoors. I had a great time crushing snails and kicking over old garden statues for about an hour before I got tired of it and settled down next to the old bird bath, now covered in ivy. There was a fox den in my line of sight, but I was partially hidden by some bushes, and I had seen the fox that lived there through the window before. She had 2 fox kids, and fascinated by nature as I was, I hoped to catch a glimpse of them if I was quiet and still enough. So, I sat down in the dirt and stared at that fox den with all the determination a 6-year-old can conjure. Eventually, perhaps worn down by the excitement and subsequent boredom, I fell asleep. When I opened my eyes again, it is much colder outside, and the sun is starting to set. I remember being worried about getting punished, but before the worry grows enough to make me run back inside, I hear some noise not far away and turn to look at it. Sure enough, there is a fox sitting near the entrance of the den with its back turned to me. No kits in sight, but she is very close to me, perhaps 2 meters or 3 away, and I am so amazed by the closeness that I stay silent and unmoving. She is moving her head in a jerking motion, but I think nothing of it. I thought that perhaps she was grooming herself. But then, slowly, and with what seems like great effort, the fox stands up and starts to turn towards me. Something instantly seems wrong. The fur around the face and the neck seems matted with some dark substance. It's a bit shiny like tar, and her jaw is hanging open as if she could not close it. I'm not afraid at that point, but I am concerned that she is seriously hurt, so my reflex is to call out to her, and I start making those pss 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 noises that you make at cats. The head instantly snaps towards me. No real movement, just one moment I can see the fox's profile, and another, she is facing me, as if there was missing frames. The fox starts to make a horrible sound, as if you have put rocks in a blender, and the smell of rot reaches me. I am now nauseous from the smell and a bit apprehensive, but being the stupid child I am, I still don't move. We stare at each other for perhaps seconds, perhaps minutes, as the noise continues without interruption. She jumps straight at me, but I am frozen in place and can't even flinch as the fox clears the 2-meter jump and almost reaches me, jaw still hanging almost to her throat. She seems to crash against something in the air because something stops her momentum and lands not far from me, completely still for a few moments. But the sound never stops, and after a few moments, her body starts convulsing violently, big jerking movement that looked unnatural. At this point, I finally gather my wits and start legging it back to the door, stumbling over old pots at my own feet in my terror. I reach the door and safely make it back inside, but I remember that the sound cut off as soon as I reached the open area of the garden. I spent about an hour, terrified, hiding in my bedroom until my mother comes home and I spill the beans on what happened, too scared to care about the punishment. She says that she will lock the garden doors from now on, but she did not seem surprised at all. I never saw the fox again after that, nor her kids, but for weeks after, we would find traces of black, rotten-smelling substance on the outside walls and stairs as if it had been rubbed there. I was not allowed into the back garden, even supervised, so perhaps that's why the encounters stopped there. But I swear, there was something horribly wrong with that fox, and I'm sure it was not rabies, like I was told. I will be back with other stories later. It's late, and I need to work tomorrow. I have more stories to share, but as I said, I dislike writing green text, so if you don't want to read a long post, just don't. As I said, it's to get this off my chest anonymously, not to cater to strangers online. The following incident happened when I was about 8 years old and living in a small village in the French countryside. Because the village was so small, I had a lot more freedom to go running in the surrounding forests and hills, and I would often do so for hours at a time. So when I left the house on that specific day, it was with the expectation that no one would be looking for me until the evening. I was used to such excursions and had a pocket knife, water, a sandwich, and some matches on me with the intention of trying to find some animal bones to put in my room. I blame my mom for that creepy interest, as she was really into vulture culture. The woods were familiar and the undergrowth was not too thick, so I did not think anything of it when the woods started getting quieter and quieter, the birds giving a short sharp sound before falling silently, one by one. After a while, a faint smell started to permeate the air, metallic like blood, but with a hint of sweetness. It wasn't anything I had smelled before, but I was not worried at the time. Eventually, I settle against a fallen log to examine my find so far, and I hear footsteps. It's not uncommon for hikers to go through the woods, but I was far from the public trails, and you would have to crawl under and over a lot of thorns to get where I was. I turn to look at the hiker, but it's a kid, a bit younger than me, and in clothes that seem completely out of place. It's the middle of autumn, but that kid is wearing a tank top and shorts, and flip-flops of all things, and he is not scratched up. We stare at each other for a bit before I grab my findings and get up with the intention of leaving, but he calls out to me and asks me to wait. I don't answer, but I do turn towards him and wait a little. I was mostly curious, but knew that I should not talk to him. He starts walking towards me, pushing through the undergrowth like it's nothing, and he still seems unharmed, not a scratch on him after he pushed his bare shoulders through a blackberry bush. I am uneasy at this point, but it seems rude to simply leave, so I wait until he reaches me. He looks normal up close, so normal that you would not remember his face in a crowd, and he is holding a small squirrel skull in his hands. He motions for me to open my hands and drops it into my hands, giving me a very wide smile as he does so. For some reason, I pull out my sandwich and hold it out to him. His smile fades, but he takes it. I start to leave again, but he asks me to wait, with the exact same pitch. I know that I will get my ass beat if I become too friendly with the local kids, so I tell him I can't stay. Come back, he asks me. The phrasing seemed weird, even then, but I say sure, and book it back home with my new treasures. The next time I go into the woods, he shows up again. He gives me a small antler, and I give him the crisps I had on me, because it seems fair. We hang out in silence for a while. I was very socially awkward, so it suited me perfectly, and I did not even think it was weird. And when I leave, he once again asks me if I will come back. I say yes, and this continues for a while. We exchange gifts, and either sit on the ground or walk around the woods together in silence. The most words we exchange is when I say I want to go somewhere, and the kid never answers verbally. I never even asked his name. My grandmother interrogates me about some of my finds, as some bones I bring back aren't from native animals, but I say that I found them, and she eventually drops it, although she seems suspicious. It stays like that until one day, I get into an argument with my grandmother and run away to the woods to have a good crying session, not taking anything with me. The kid shows up regardless, as he always seems to know when I will be in the woods, and he holds another small skull and holds it out towards me. I'm crying, but manage to mumble that it would not be fair, because I have no food. He keeps holding it out until eventually he seems to get annoyed and grabs one of my wrists to pull my hand towards him and drop the skull in my hand. I cry out. The sensation of his skin on mine burns like hot metal. He frowns, the expression looking odd on his face because only his forehead really moves. The rest of his face is like a mask. We both stare at each other in silence until I clutch my wrist with another cry of pain, noting that it starts to turn red, and for the first time, the boy leaves first, pushing through brambles just as confidently as before. I go home and show my injury to my mom, who starts to put some cream on it before I tell her that a boy hurt me, and she suddenly goes still. She asks me if I made a friend that I did not tell her about, and I say that he could not be a friend because we did not talk, but that we made trades. After a few more questions, she seems to drop it, but she puts dried herbs in the bandages, which is strange. We left 2 days later in a rush, and they make me leave all of my gifts in the garden, no matter how much I try to argue. I do sneak the first squirrel skull in my pockets though. I too have a story to share. There's this land in rural Italy that now belongs to my grandfather. It's literally a dump that overlooks a creek. My grandfather wanted to build us a house, but for one reason or another, he never did it. Several interesting things have happened on and around this land. Multiple UFO sightings and abductions. A butcher killed his wife and buried her nearby. Once, a panther escaped from a nearby circus, and since then, the residents in the area hear bestial noises and several corpses, animals, but if I'm not mistaken, also humans, have been found hanging from trees. The most interesting thing about this terrain is that throughout history, several armies disappeared completely or were completely massacred right where my grandfather wanted to build. On this ground have walked the Romans, the Etruscans, some Germanic tribes, the Phoenicians, Americans, and World War II. Now I will tell you my story on this ground. It must have been the 90s, and my grandfather, together with a friend of his, began digging to prepare the foundations. They dig, and at one point, they found bones, human bones. They dug for months in different areas of the ground. Unfortunately, I can't tell you how big it is, and every time, they only found human bones and coins, swords, spears, helmets, and other odds and ends. My grandfather, since he did not want authorities to confiscate the land for archaeological excavations, decided to take all the bones and threw them into the stream. Probably, this gesture enraged the souls of these poor bastards who from that day on haunt the land. The residents nearby have left because they were afraid of spirits. Also, my family thinks that my grandfather was cursed, but that is another story, also quite funny. Fast forward, it is the early 2000s. I was about 3, maybe 5 years old. My mom takes me to that lot because she wanted me to meet some relatives who at the time were helping my grandfather fix some junk or something. Me, my mom, and my dad arrive on the ground. My grandfather and uncle were looking for my aunt who was lost in the woods. She comes screaming out of the woods, saying she saw ghosts. Takes my uncle. They get in the car and drive away. My mother asked my grandfather what she was talking about. My mother is very superstitious, and my grandfather replies with an almost ironic tone, "If you knew how many bastards died here, If I told you, you would not believe me. After a while, they argue, but I realize there is something in the woods. I look closer, and I see Roman legionnaires in uniform, with banners staring at us. I tell my mom, but she cannot see anything. Scared, she takes me away from that land, but before we could leave, I saw, in a nearby vineyard, hundreds of men dressed in green, with turtle shells on their heads. I tell my mom, and she saw these soldiers just before they disappeared. She was so terrified that to this day, she still speaks of it as one of the most terrifying moments of her life. That ground is still there. My grandfather has not set foot on it for years now. This reawoke the memory of a spooky childhood clown happening of mine. Unlike a lot of kids, I really like clowns, even scary ones. Because of this, when I was about 9, my mom and dad hired a clown for my birthday party. When the party came, the clown came. His name was something like Polka Pete, or something else. My memory is foggy because I was 9 years old at the time. I noticed immediately he was really tall. Again, I was a kid at the time, but even according to my dad, he was giant. My dad is 6'4" for reference and works in construction, and Polka Pete was a whole head taller than him. Pete moved so weirdly. Again, even my parents remember it. It was like his arms and legs had additional knees and elbows, and his face was so uncanny. Even to a kid like me who loved clowns, he was uncanny. I did not want to be around Pete, and my parents did not want him around. My dad told him to his face to leave, and offered to pay him bonus up front if he just left. Pete froze up at this, breathing heavily in my dad's face. My dad said it took him all the willpower in his body not to throw up in that moment, because Pete's breath was rancid. And then a few moments later, a car covered in polka dots pulled up to the house, and an actual clown stepped out. Polka Pete suddenly stood up straight, getting this 1,000-yard stare in his eyes before sprinting off, really unnaturally. The actual clown was confused as fuck about why there was someone else there, and we all realized rather quickly that Polka Pete never showed up in a car. It seemed like he just materialized at the front door. Pick related, what Polka Pete kinda looked like, although his suit had polka dots and his face was more like an uncanny robot. Quick note too, according to my dad around this time, and for probably 2 years after, anytime something will be left in the backyard, after a few hours, it would flat out vanish. Not be misplaced, it would just be gone the next day. I have no idea if it has anything to do with Polka Pete, but still, spooky to think about. Time for an actual spooky experience that 100% happened. On island during the day. Great breeze, sun is shining, maybe a quarter of a mile wide, can see shore clearly so it wasn't far. Decide to sit and watch the sunset for a while. Fall asleep. Dream about living in a basement. I don't know where it is. Maybe 20 feet by 20 feet. Definitely not my house. Everything is either white or an off-white with dim lighting. My GF is there, and we are checking out my computer, which is in this clear acrylic housing underneath the steps. The thing has to be 4 feet tall. Crazy heat sinks and red LED lights everywhere. I was in the middle of testing it out when I felt like I could not breathe, as if I was drowning. Could not figure out what to do. Race up the steps along one wall. Wake up. Turns out, I was dragged out by the tide. The surface is maybe 15 feet above my head. All I felt was the need to breathe. Swim up desperately to the surface and take a big breath. I still can't breathe. I swim to shore and run around. There is nothing on this dumb shit island except for trees. How did I get here? I'm dreaming. I don't know how to get out of my dream. I start frantically running around the island. I scream at the top of my lungs. That's when I finally wake up, but I still can't breathe. I wake up in a room, maybe 3 by 3 wide, with tall ceilings and a window at the very top. I need to climb out of that window. Jumping and using the walls as best as I could, I make several desperate attempts at reaching it. If I reach it, I can finally breathe. I finally get to it. It's some sort of skylight, broken up into 4 smaller windows. I push it open. I finally wake up, laying on my already made bed in my room, the afternoon sun setting. Gasping for air, I'd double over on my side and just lay there for an hour. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you do and you want to hear more, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment down below, as it lets the algorithm know that you like my content and it promotes it to more people. My goal for the channel is to hit 50,000 subscribers, and we're closing in fast, so thank you, and back to the stories. Post in some OC that happened to me about 9 years ago. Be in the Air Force, stationed in Montana, guarding nukes. They are in the middle of nowhere usually. It's boring as fuck. Nothing ever happens. Finish about 11 hours of babysitting a site. Our relief shows up. Secure our Humvee, and me and my bro head out. Make it about 10 minutes when we get a call that something tripped a vacant site's IMP-SS alarm. It's on the way back to base, so we're told to check it out real quick. 100% of the time, it is a fucking rabbit or ground squirrel that makes it inside the fence and sets the thing off. Get to site. It is October, and there is snow on the ground, but it's not snowing. The wind is blowing the snow that is on the ground everywhere. Feels like fucking needles, and I had already pulled my face mask off since I thought we were going home, but I decided to just deal with it. This should only take a minute. Bro tells me to check it out alone. Not supposed to ever do security checks alone, but literally everyone does, and you just take turns. Stomping through the snow, can't see shit, and freezing my balls off. Spooky part comes next. Can't see anything, but walk entire perimeter. Walk back to Humvee, and send out all clear over radio. We drive about a minute down the road, when we are told to turn around. The fucking alarm is tripped again. Go back to site. This time, we actually have to go on site and verify there is nothing inside. Then we can go. It's bro's turn to freeze his ass off. I can sit in the nice warm Humvee. Bro pulls right up to the fence. I am in the passenger seat. Bro gets out, unlocks gate, disappears into the darkness and snow. Crunch, 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 crunch. Hear someone moving in the deep snow. There are farms and shit all over these nuke sites, so it could be a farmer, but I doubt it. Don't have MVGs or anything cool, just a good old flashlight. Shine it around. See nothing. Nearly have a heart attack as bro flips on site's floodlights to check the perimeter. These massive lights give just enough vision for me to see a huge black ball standing in the corner of my eye. Turn to face it, and it takes off. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It runs on all fours. Can only make out antlers or horns. Looks like a big ass goat, but I swear it stood on 2 legs before it realized I saw it. Bro calls me on the radio to check this out. Go to him. Massive hoof marks in the snow. Mostly covered from the blowing wind, so they had to be fresh. Tell him about what I saw. Says it must be a big ass billy goat. This thing was bear sized, so there is no fucking way. Anyone got any ideas for what it was? I didn't smell any coppery bullshit, so it wasn't a skinwalker. Be me. Southeast Asian. Work at McDonald's in my town for a while. Night shift. In time. Notice the regulars eating on a nightly basis. Notice a regular. Muscular dude. Has a well-kept beard and mustache. Has slight Indian looks. Not unusual since there is international students in the uni in my town. Only thing is, he does not look like a student. Dresses in a suit every time he goes to order. Like a real, well-kept suit. Town is not that big, and there is no such thing as big office skyscrapers or buildings that has that kind of attire. Notice he always orders the exact same order for the last 4 months. 1 piece of chicken with rice and a chicken sandwich, plus 1 large Coke McFloat with the one with ice cream sundae on the Coke drink. McDonald's menu is different in my country. Always just stares at one direction and never ever blinks. Eats like a statue or a goddamn Agent 47 kind of atmosphere. After eating, he just stands up for like 30 seconds and looks at the whole McDonald's and then leaves. Just walks. No car. Did not take any bus. Can't follow him because I got my shift. Fast forward to another 3 months. Usual routine. One day, he goes to McDonald's all raggedy, like he's a homeless person, like dirty clothes, straight out from a mechanic fixing a car. Hair too long, like off the shoulders. Note that he always had short, well-kept hair all this time, up to this point. Didn't even know how he got his hair too long in the span of one night, cause previous night, he was the same. He orders the exact same food. Same manners. What he looked like is the only difference tonight. After eating, he does the same routine to look at the whole McDonald's, then suddenly looks at me for more than a minute. Notice his eyes looked weird. Can't explain it, but it's the uncanny valley feeling. Leaves the McDonald's. Never see him again. Start some small talk to my coworker that's always with me since I got the job. Says he didn't notice him too much. Never see him again. Tried to search on any accidents that might happen and might be related. Nothing. Dude never went back to McDonald's ever again. Did I notice an NPC? I live in central Indiana. Gets boring around here. Nothing but corn and old people. Even Indy gets pretty boring. One of my favorite things to do used to be late night walks. On one late summer night in 2015, I had an encounter that I can't explain properly. Be walking by the cornfields, flashlight in one hand, the other in my pocket. Never carry a firearm because not much crime happens out here. I've walked down this road plenty of times and nothing out of the ordinary ever happened before. Suddenly, a huge flash across the sky, like someone let off a flare gun or something. Probably some rednecks with their fireworks. Stopped dead in my tracks when I realized the ball of light lingers in the sky too long. Realize that I never heard a shot fire, and that this light is too bright to be a flare. Also, why would it be coming out of a cornfield at this hour? My heart rate increases. Something just is not right. The air starts getting colder. Sounds of crickets and cicadas go silent. Check my phone. It's 2:07 a.m. Try to unlock it in case of emergency, but it shuts off without going to the powering down screen. Nearly shit myself. Battery was at 80%. Fuck this shit. I turn around and start speed walking home. Feel this immense pressure from behind, like I'm being followed, but don't turn around to look. Really regretting not taking my piece with me. Light in the sky starts flickering out, like an old light bulb. It's dark again. Great. Turn my flashlight on again and start into a light jog. 15 feet ahead, the corn starts to shake. A figure steps out of the corn and raises a rifle at me. I nearly run into it, barrel in my face before I halt. I scream, but I feel relieved when I realize who the man is. Won't say his name for privacy. I'll just call him Farmer John. He's an old friend of my father's, fought in Nam together. He lowers the rifle and asks me what the hell I was doing out here at 4 a.m. I look at him confused. I tell him it's 2 and I'm just out for a walk. Now he looks concerned. Feel a warm trickle down my lips. When I touch it, I look at my fingers and freak out. My nose is fucking bleeding. Anon, are you alright? Farmer John asks, stepping closer to me. Stumble back a little, then collapse. I wake up in John's house. It's 1 p.m. Wife is there, hysterical. John tells me I passed out last night. Asks me again why I was out there. I tell him I was taking a walk, like I usually do. Tell him late night walks clear my head. He asks me what I was babbling about in my sleep. Something about the long men with big eyes and icy fingers. At this point, I'm fucking terrified. I tell him I don't know what he's talking about. Explain that I saw a strange light in the sky at around 2 a.m., then turned around to head home because I was not feeling right. That's when I bumped into him. John asked me if I'm sure about the time. I say yes because I checked my phone before it shut off. John swears to me that he found me stumbling around the side of his plot at 4:30 a.m. I ask my wife, who's crying, to hand me my phone. It doesn't turn on. I check the battery. The damn thing melted into the back of the phone. Literally, what the fuck. Thank John for helping me and go home with my wife. She asked me what really happened. tell her the same thing I told John. She thinks I'm crazy. Almost ruins our marriage, because she thinks I got into some illegal shit. I used to bet on sports, had my fair share of troubles in the past over that. If my own wife doesn't believe me, I'm sure no one else would. Sometimes I get these sharp headaches that make my face tremble, but not often. I don't do late night walks anymore. Only reason I share this now is that I've almost gone mad not having a place to share this story to. Hopefully people here will believe me. Be me, 14 years old at the time. Be walking home from a shitty team party where all we had was some wine coolers and light beer. Party crashed by a guy who got alcohol poisoning and ambulanced from too much light beer. How the fuck he did it, I don't know. Not buzzed or even drunk, just walking home, semi-pissed. I lived miles away, and nobody lived in my direction, which did not help at all. So, as I walk home, I hear one of my friends who was at the party. "Anon, wait up, that was fucked up, eh?" Turn around, but there is nobody there. Lol, what? Look around and call him out. No reply. Wait around to see if the asshole was hiding behind a bush or something. Nothing. Okay, weird. Getting kind of nervous. I call him up on my brick of a cell phone, and he says he's already home. Joke, saying that I thought I heard him talking to me. Yeah, dude, I was asking if you wanted to crash at my place, since you live so far. Oh, okay, nah, I'm just tired. I think I'll go straight home. I brush it off, as me just registering the words late or something. I continue home, but keep hearing muffled voices behind me that kind of sound like my friends. Realizing that they must have been following me, I run towards the sound of the voices. I ran about 2 blocks, and no sense of footsteps or anything, but I still hear the voices. Get really flustered. If they were pulling a prank, they got me. I dial up the friend again, and he immediately picks up. He's annoyed and answers loudly. What, dude? Cut the shit. I know you guys are following me. What? You're the one knocking on my fucking window. You woke my parents up. Dude, cut it out. At this point, my fears come back, and I'm cold, sweating and shit. Knock it off. We can even see you. I can hear in the background of the call my other friends and his parents getting pissed too, and the knocking is pretty fucking loud. I hear some of them say shit like, "Is that Anon? Tell him to stop or we'll call the police." All the while the knocking sound is prevalent. Man, I'm on X Road. I thought I heard you guys laughing and calling my name and shit. Okay then, what the fuck? He stops to talk to 2 other friends with him. It's not him. Yeah, I told you it can't be him. He went home. Hey Anon, go home man. There's some fuck shit going on here. I'm wetting my pants just listening. I hang up, and then I hear another muffled voice, and then I just ran for my life. I remember getting to my house and just deadlocking all the doors and hiding under my blankets. Vowed never to walk home that late again.